You are holding a book about emotions, but this is not another manual on how to be positive or suppress your feelings. This is a blueprint for those who are ready to get off emotional autopilot and take the wheel. The pages ahead are not about personality makeovers or airy ideals. They are about mechanical skills, tools you can test, debug, and strengthen, regardless of where you start. If you have ever left a meeting replaying your own words in regret, or found yourself hijacked by a surge of feeling you couldn't explain, you are not defective. You are running software that has never been updated. Emotional intelligence is not a trait you are born with, nor is it the exclusive domain of the naturally gifted. It is a collection of learnable abilities: seeing clearly, labeling precisely, understanding deeply, and acting intentionally. You do not need to wish for less emotion. You need to train for greater clarity and control. This book exists because the costs of untrained emotion are real: frayed relationships, stalled careers, and a daily undercurrent of stress that erodes energy and trust. Too many people assume that if they just try harder or think logically, things will improve. But willpower without skill is exhausting. Real change begins when you recognize that your feelings are not obstacles, they are signals. Treat them as data, not commands. And the distance between what you feel and how you act becomes a space of possibility. You will not find magic formulas here. Instead, you will find practical protocols: how to close the EQ gap, how to run emotional diagnostics, how to shift from blind reaction to deliberate response. You will see why suppression and venting both fail, why being nice is not the same as being emotionally skilled, and how your internal clarity sets the foundation for your influence in any room. Along the way, you will be challenged to become the author, not the victim, of your own reactions. You will build habits, not heroic one-off efforts, but sustainable practices that over time create an unshakable reputation for calm and trust. You will learn to read not only your own dashboard, but the subtle signals of those around you, turning empathy into a tactical advantage. Ultimately, the promise of this book is not perfection, but progress. If you commit to the training, you will find yourself recovering faster from setbacks, resolving conflict without collateral damage, and earning the trust of those who matter most. Emotional intelligence is not about feeling less. It is about feeling wisely, using emotion as fuel rather than friction. The journey begins at the moment you stop outsourcing your responses and start taking radical responsibility. Each chapter will equip you with concrete steps: notice, name, choose, so that emotional intelligence is not something you aspire to, but something you do, one decision at a time. Let's begin. Chapter 1: The EQ Gap. There is a hidden tax you pay every single day, and you likely do not even see it on the ledger. It is the cost of the email you sent in a flash of irritation, the one that required 3 days of damage control to fix. It is the promotion that went to a less qualified colleague simply because they remain steady under pressure while you tend to crack. It is the silence at the dinner table that follows an argument where you insisted on being right rather than being understood. This tax is levied by the EQ gap, the distance between what you feel and how you actually behave. Most people believe that intelligence, technical skill, or sheer effort determines their altitude in life. They are wrong. If you cannot manage the chemical storms in your own brain, your technical skills are held hostage by your mood. You might think you are reading this book to become nicer or better with people, but let us be clear from the first page: this is not about etiquette. This is about performance. This is about stopping the leakage of your energy, your reputation, and your potential into the void of reactivity. You are here because you suspect that your emotions are currently running the show. You are right. But the good news is that emotional intelligence is not a genetic lottery ticket. It is a set of mechanical skills, muscles that can be torn down and rebuilt stronger. By the end of this chapter, you will understand exactly what this training entails. You will see the stark difference between the life of someone who is dragged behind their emotions and the life of someone who drives them. The shift from passenger to pilot. The first time you successfully apply the principles of this book, the result will feel less like a miracle and more like a mechanical click. You will experience a shift in identity. For years, you may have operated under the assumption that I am angry or I am anxious. This linguistic trap fuses you with the temporary state. The first major achievement you will unlock is the ability to say, I am experiencing anger. This sounds trivial, but it is the difference between being the passenger in a runaway car and being the driver who notices a warning light on the dashboard. When you treat feelings as signals rather than orders you must obey, you create a microscopic pause. In that pause, freedom exists. You will start catching yourself mid-reaction. The impulse to snap at a colleague will rise, but instead of riding that wave into a regretful confrontation, you will notice it, name it, and choose a different move. This is the gap we are trying to widen. You will build a simple mental map. Emotional intelligence is not a vague aura. It consists of 4 hard skills: noticing, naming, understanding, and managing. You will begin to see these abilities, or the lack of them, playing out in every meeting and every family gathering. You will stop seeing difficult people and start seeing unregulated people. You will identify your own bottlenecks. Perhaps you are excellent at perceiving emotions, but terrible at managing them. Perhaps you can manage your face perfectly, but you have no idea what you are actually feeling inside. Identifying the bottleneck is the first step to breaking it. The immediate payoff is tangible. You will diffuse a conversation that would normally escalate into a fight. You will delete an impulsive message that would have torched a bridge. You will walk away from a high-stress interaction, not with your heart pounding in your throat, but with a quiet sense of pride because you stayed in the cockpit. The long game, calm authority, and deep trust. If you commit to the training, the compounding returns over time are massive. The first thing that shifts is your reputation. In every social or professional circle, there is an unspoken hierarchy based on emotional stability. When a crisis hits, a deadline is missed, a client is furious, a child is screaming, most people contract. They panic, they blame, or they hide. If you have trained your emotional skills, you become the person others look to. You radiate a calm authority that cannot be faked. You become the anchor in the storm. This is not because you lack feelings, but because you are not drowning in them. Your relationships will undergo a fundamental reconstruction. Most relationships are defined by recurring scripts, the same arguments about money, the same defensive reactions to feedback, the same silent treatments. These are symptoms of the EQ gap. As you close that gap, you replace recurring battles with repair and understanding. You build partnerships rooted in safety, where difficult truths can be spoken without shattering the bond. You stop attracting people who feed on drama and start attracting people who value growth and accountability. Ultimately, this leads to sustainable resilience. The world will not stop throwing chaos at you. You will still face setbacks, criticism, and failure. The difference is that the emotionally intelligent individual recovers faster. You will not lose weeks to spiraling rumination. You will make decisions based on your long-term values, not your momentary mood. You will use emotional storms as training data, sharpening your skills for the next challenge, rather than using them as excuses to stay small. The autopilot epidemic. The problem we face is that the vast majority of the population runs on emotional autopilot. We are biologically wired to react first and reflect later, if we reflect at all. Evolution designed your amygdala to keep you alive in the jungle, not to help you navigate a nuanced negotiation or a delicate conversation with your spouse. When you feel a surge of defensiveness, your brain treats a critique of your spreadsheet like a physical attack. You snap, you shut down, or you counterattack. Then you spend hours justifying your reaction. This is the trap of fake logic. We love to believe we are rational creatures, but we are mostly emotional creatures who use logic to explain what we just did. You convince yourself you yelled because the other person was late, but in reality, you yelled because you were already stressed, hungry, and lacking the tools to regulate your frustration. We confuse intensity with honesty, telling ourselves, "At least I am being real," when in fact we are just being unregulated. Compounding this issue is a lack of shared language. We try to build complex lives with a primitive emotional vocabulary. We say we are stressed, or fine, or tired. These are catch-all buckets that hold a dozen different states. If you cannot distinguish between disappointment and shame, or between anxiety and excitement, you cannot solve the problem. It is like trying to fix a complex engine when the only tool you have is a hammer. Because we lack the framework to recognize patterns, we misunderstand others and remain mysteries to ourselves, doomed to repeat the same loops in different jobs and different relationships. The silent cost of low EQ. If you choose to ignore this gap, the consequences are severe and progressive. The first casualty is trust. Low emotional intelligence breeds chronic conflict. Arguments never truly resolve. They just go underground, turning into cold wars of silence and resentment. People start walking on eggshells around you. They withhold information because they are afraid of your reaction. Important relationships slowly erode under the weight of unspoken tension until they collapse. Professionally, the cost is stalled growth. You might be the smartest person in the room, but if you are volatile, defensive, or oblivious to social cues, you hit a ceiling. You get labeled. You are difficult, fragile, or not leadership material. You make career moves based on fear or ego rather than strategy. You watch calmer, more emotionally skilled peers surpass you, not because they are better at the technical work, but because they are better at the human work. Internally, the price is exhaustion. Living without emotional skills is like driving with the parking brake on. You live in a constant background hum of irritation, guilt, or anxiety. You burn precious mental energy replaying conversations you wish you had handled better, rewriting history in your head. Over time, you lower your standards. You accept that this is just how I am, and you settle for a life that is smaller, louder, and more painful than the one you are capable of living. The three-step protocol. Closing the EQ gap requires a systematic approach. We are not going to hold hands and sing. We are going to execute a protocol. This book is structured around three critical phases of development. First, you must build awareness and vocabulary. You cannot manage what you cannot perceive. You must learn to notice the moment-to-moment shifts in your physiology and your mind. You need to expand your vocabulary beyond the basic primary colors of emotion so you can paint with high-definition granularity. You need to track your recurring patterns to see the shape of your own psyche. Second, you must integrate emotion into thinking. This is where we shatter the myth that feelings are the enemy of reason. You will learn to treat feelings as high-density information. You will distinguish between a raw emotional impulse and a considered choice. You will learn to ask the pivotal question, what is this emotion trying to tell me, and what is it trying to protect? Third, you must learn regulation and expression. Once you have the data, you need the tools to act on it. This involves simple, mechanical levers, breathing, reframing, pausing, that dial intensity up or down. It involves practicing clear, respectful expression in low-stakes settings so that when the stakes are high, your training takes over. You will build tiny daily habits that turn regulation from a struggle into a reflex. Why you can't skip steps. There is a specific reason for this order. Many people want to jump straight to controlling their anger or influencing others. It does not work that way. You cannot regulate a feeling you have not acknowledged. If you try to control an emotion without awareness, you are just suppressing it. Suppression is not regulation. It is a delay tactic that leads to an eventual explosion. Naming an emotion is the neurological brake pedal that shifts you from pure reaction to observation. Furthermore, your thinking must be rebuilt with emotion, not against it. If you try to strip emotion out of your decision-making to be logical, you become brittle and disconnected. You make decisions that look good on paper but feel wrong in reality, leading to lack of commitment and eventual failure. Emotional data informs what truly matters to you. Only after you have awareness and integration can you effectively master expression and regulation. If you try to express yourself without the first two steps, you are either vomiting raw emotion onto others or performing a fake script. The sequence is non-negotiable. Awareness leads to integration, which allows for regulation, which eventually creates a new culture. Victimhood versus authorship. Ultimately, This comes down to a choice between two mindsets. There is the attitude of the victim and the attitude of the author. The victim mindset is the default setting for the loser in the game of emotional intelligence. This person blames others for every reaction. They say, "You made me angry," handing over the remote control of their emotional state to someone else. They wear their volatility like a badge of honor, claiming, "That is just how I am," or "I am Italian, I yell," using identity as a shield against growth. They avoid responsibility and remain stuck in a loop of reaction and regret. The winner mindset is one of emotional authorship. This person sees every emotional surge not as a failure, but as a training rep. When they feel the heat rise, they get curious. They ask, "What can I learn about myself from this reaction?" They take radical responsibility for their responses, even when the trigger was unfair. They understand that while they cannot control what happens to them, they have absolute authority over what happens next. This path requires a commitment to long-term growth. Emotional skills are not downloaded, they are forged. You must accept that you will stumble. You will have days where you revert to the old scripts. But the winner celebrates the small wins, the one conversation that didn't go off the rails, the one moment of patience in a traffic jam. They decide, consciously and deliberately, to become the most emotionally skilled person in their circle. You are standing at the edge of the gap. On one side is the life you have always known, reactive, exhausting, and often regretful. On the other side is a life of clarity, power, and connection. The bridge between them is built one skill at a time. The cost of staying where you are is too high. It is time to stop paying the tax and start building the asset. But to build the asset, you first need a blueprint. You need to stop treating emotional intelligence as a buzzword and start seeing it as a machine with moving parts. In the next section, we're going to tear that machine apart and show you exactly how it works. Before we continue, make sure to subscribe to Grow to the Top and activate notifications to receive more self-improvement tips that will supercharge your growth. And make sure to give this video a thumbs up and share it with your friends. It really helps the channel grow. Thank you for your support. Chapter 2, Real Emotional IQ. Stop trying to be better with people. It is a trap. It is a vague, shapeless goal that leads nowhere because you cannot track it, you cannot measure it, and you certainly cannot train it. Trying to improve your emotional intelligence without a concrete blueprint is like trying to build a house by just wishing for it to be sturdier. You end up buying into trends, mimicking personality hacks, or forcing a smile when you actually want to scream, all while wondering why you still feel exhausted and misunderstood at the end of the day. You are here because you want results, not platitudes. You want to know why you freeze in negotiations, why you snap at your partner, or why you can't seem to shake off a bad morning. To solve these problems, we have to strip away the corporate buzzwords and the soft focus advice. We need to look at the machinery under the hood. This chapter is your schematic. We are going to break emotional intelligence down into 5 distinct, trainable, mechanical parts. Once you see these parts, you will never look at a human interaction the same way again. You will stop seeing drama and start seeing data. You will stop wondering if you are good or bad at emotions and start asking which specific circuit is overheating. This is where we turn a fuzzy concept into a hard skill stack. The fog of good intentions. Clarity is the only thing that turns effort into results. Most people fail to improve their emotional life because they are fighting a fog. They feel off, or they feel stressed, or they feel like they are bad at communicating. These are not diagnoses. They are complaints. If you cannot isolate the variable, you cannot fix the equation. High performers in every other field understand this. An elite athlete does not just try to be more athletic. They break their performance down into explosive power, endurance, flexibility, and recovery. They train each component separately. A grandmaster chess player does not just try to play better. They study openings, mid-game tactics, and endgame theory. Yet, when it comes to the most defining factor of our success, our ability to navigate our own nervous systems and those of others, we settle for guessing. When you lack a clear model, you are prone to self-deception. You might convince yourself that you are excellent with people because you are chatty and extroverted. But without a map, you might miss the fact that while you are talking, you are completely blind to the boredom or irritation on the faces of your listeners. You might think you are stoic and professional, while a clear model would reveal that you are actually just suppressed and unreadable, causing anxiety in everyone who works for you. A model prevents you from lying to yourself. It gives you a standard against which you can measure your actual behavior, not just your intentions. The 5-part engine. Let us look at the engine itself. Real emotional intelligence is not a personality trait, it is an ability model. It consists of 5 specific gears that must turn in sequence. The first gear is the ability to perceive. This is your radar. It is the raw capacity to notice that an emotion is happening in the first place. It is seeing the slight tightening of a colleague's jaw, noticing the drop in energy in a room, or catching the first flutter of anxiety in your own chest. Most people operate with this radar jammed. They are so lost in their own thoughts that they miss the data entirely until the situation explodes. The second gear is the ability to name. This is your code. It is the ability to attach a precise label to the sensation. It is the difference between saying, "I feel bad," and saying, "I feel diminished and defensive." As we will explore later, accuracy here is everything. If you mislabel the problem, you will apply the wrong solution. You cannot fix sadness with the tools meant for anger. The third gear is the ability to understand. This is your logic. It is the capacity to grasp cause and effect. It is knowing that your sudden irritation is not really about the dirty dishes, but about the disrespectful comment your boss made 6 hours ago. It is understanding the trajectory of an emotion, knowing that if you let this resentment simmer, it will turn into contempt. This is where you become a detective of your own patterns. The fourth gear is the ability to use. This is your fuel. This is the most often overlooked skill. Emotions are not just obstacles to be managed, they are resources. Anxiety is a mobilization of energy. Can you channel it into preparation? Anger is a boundary defense mechanism. Can you use it to assert a necessary limit? High EQ means using the mood to aid the task, rather than fighting the mood to do the task. The fifth gear is the ability to manage. This is your steering. This is what most people think of as the whole of emotional intelligence, but it is only the final step. It is the ability to regulate your internal state and express it in a way that aligns with your goals. It is calming yourself down when you need to listen, or psyching yourself up when you need to present. It is choosing to delay a reaction until you are in a safe environment. These abilities are modular. You can be a genius at perceiving, picking up every subtle cue in the room, but terrible at managing, so you just absorb everyone's stress until you burn out. You can be excellent at managing, keeping a poker face, but terrible at understanding, so you have no idea why you are feeling what you are feeling. When you see EQ as a set of separate muscles, you stop judging yourself as a whole and start training the specific muscle that is weak. Killing the nice guy myth. Before we can build this skill stack, we have to clear the demolition site of bad ideas. There are pervasive myths that will sabotage your training if we do not dismantle them right now. The biggest lie is that having high EQ means being nice. This is false. Emotional intelligence is about effectiveness, not agreeableness. Sometimes, the most emotionally intelligent move you can make is to deliver a hard truth, to set a rigid boundary, or to fire someone who is toxic to the team. The difference is that a person with low EQ does these things reactively, with cruelty or panic. A person with high EQ does them with clarity and precision. Superficial niceness is often just a mask for low courage. If you are smiling while you're seething, that is not emotional intelligence. That is deception, and it eventually rots the relationship. The second lie is that you're born with a fixed amount of EQ. People say, "I am just hot-headed," or "I'm just not a people person." This is nonsense. While temperament plays a role in your baseline, emotional intelligence is a cognitive skill set. It is software, not hardware. The ability model exists precisely because these are abilities that can be learned. You can train yourself to notice micro expressions, just like you can train yourself to read a balance sheet. You can practice de-escalation scripts, just like you practice a tennis serve. The third lie is that high EQ people never feel strong emotions. We tend to imagine the emotionally intelligent person as a Zen monk, floating above the chaos, untouched by anger or fear. That is not mastery, that is dissociation. Mastery is feeling the anger deeply, acknowledging its fire, understanding its message, and then choosing not to burn the house down with it. The goal is not to feel less. The goal is to feel more, but to be dragged around by it less. Auditing your emotional hardware. Now that you have the model, you need to locate yourself on it. You are going to build your personal EQ blueprint. I want you to visualize those 5 abilities: perceive, name, understand, use, manage, as a dashboard. You need to rate your current abilities honestly. This is not the time for ego. If you rate yourself a 10 out of 10 on everything, you are either a saint or, more likely, you have very low self-awareness. Use a simple 1 to 10 scale. Ask yourself specific questions. For perceiving, do you notice when the mood in a meeting shifts, or are you usually the last to know? Do you realize you are getting angry before you yell, or only after? Do you have a rich vocabulary for your feelings, or do you just toggle between good and bad? Can you usually pinpoint exactly why you are upset, or does it feel like a random weather event? For using, do you know how to get yourself into the right mood for a specific task? For managing, can you calm yourself down within minutes of a trigger, or does a bad email ruin your entire weekend? Identify where you lose control. Mark your anchor ability, the one you need to strengthen first. For most people starting this work, the bottleneck is usually perceiving or managing. You might find that you are great at managing your face at work, but you are a 2 out of 10 at naming what is happening inside, so you eventually implode at home. That is your target. Set a simple training goal for the duration of this book. Do not try to fix everything at once. Choose a priority. Maybe it is stop shutting down during conflict. Maybe it is handle feedback without getting defensive. Link that priority to the specific abilities you need. If you want to stop shutting down, you need to perceive the shutdown coming, name the fear driving it, and manage the physical response to stay present. Training in the wild. You do not need a retreat or a seminar to practice this. Your life is the dojo. Every annoyance, every delay, every difficult person is a free training partner. Start using EQ subtitles in your daily life. When you are watching a movie or observing a conversation between 2 strangers or sitting in a boring meeting, mentally label what is happening. Ask yourself, is this person perceiving right now? No, they missed that cue. Is that person managing? Yes. Look at how they slowed their breathing. Watch the mechanics at play. Steal the good moves you see. If you see a leader diffuse a tense moment with a question, file that away in your manage toolbox. Turn your irritations into drills. Usually, when we get frustrated, we focus entirely on the external trigger, the slow driver, the rude clerk. Flip the camera. When you feel the heat rise, ask, which ability do I need right now? Instead of pure irritation, build a reflex of curiosity. I'm feeling a level 7 frustration. Why? Because my time is being wasted. Okay, that is understanding. Now how do I manage this so I do not arrive at work in a rage? If you are brave enough, share this model with one trusted person. Explain the 5 parts. Ask them, which one of these do you think is my blind spot? Listen to the answer without defending yourself. Use their feedback as calibration data, not as a verdict on your soul. The view from the top. What happens when you actually install this operating system? In the beginning, the results are small but significant. You will be able to explain what is happening to you in a few sentences rather than a long, rambling rant. You will know your strengths and weaknesses, so you won't put yourself in situations you aren't equipped to handle without preparation. You will start to see everyday chaos as a series of solvable puzzles. As you get better, you will reframe your past. You will stop looking at your past failures as evidence that you are a broken person and start seeing them simply as moments where you lacked a specific skill. I didn't ruin that relationship because I am unlovable. I ruined it because I had zero skills in naming and managing my insecurity. That realization is heavy, but it is also liberating. You will start designing your weeks with your EQ in mind, scheduling high-stakes conversations for times when your resources are high, not when you are depleted. At the highest level, this becomes your identity. You stop having to do emotional intelligence. You just are emotionally intelligent. You think like a coach. You intentionally cultivate these abilities in your children or your team. You become a high performer, not just because you are technically brilliant, but because you are the most grounded, clear-eyed person in the room. Traps for the unwary. There are pitfalls to watch out for as you start using this map. The most common one is weaponizing the model. It is very tempting to learn these concepts and then immediately go out and diagnose everyone else. You will want to say, "My boss has such low EQ," or "My partner is terrible at perceiving." Do not do this. Using this model to judge others is a defense mechanism. It allows you to feel superior while avoiding your own work. Use the model to understand others, yes, to see where they might be struggling, but use it to offer support or to adjust your own approach, not to dismiss them. If you know your boss is bad at perceiving, stop expecting them to read your mind and start communicating more explicitly. That is you using your EQ to solve the problem. Also, do not overcomplicate the framework. You do not need to draw complex charts every time you have a feeling. Keep it simple. In the heat of the moment, you only need one question: which ability matters most right now? Usually, the answer is simply notice or pause. You now have the blueprint. You know the 5 engines that drive your emotional life. You know that this is a skill stack, not a personality test. You have rated yourself and found the cracks in the foundation. But a blueprint is just a piece of paper. Knowing the parts of the engine does not mean you know how to read the gauges when the pressure is spiking and the warning lights are flashing. You can have the best map in the world, but it is useless if you are standing in the dark. To use these skills, you first need to turn on the lights inside your own head. You need to clear the fog that keeps you from seeing what you are actually feeling in real time. Next, we are going to learn how to see in the dark. Chapter 3: Inner Clarity. Imagine you are driving a high-performance car at 100 miles per hour. Suddenly, the windshield fogs up completely. You can't see the road, you can't see the other cars, and you can't see the cliff edge approaching. What happens to your body? You grip the wheel until your knuckles turn white. Your heart hammers against your ribs. You panic. This is how most people live their emotional lives, moving fast, completely blind to what is actually happening inside the cockpit. Terrified of the crash they feel is inevitable but cannot predict. You might think you know how you feel. You say things like, "I'm stressed," or "I'm just off today." But these are not accurate readings. They are fog. Stressed is a bucket that holds everything from terrified of failure to exhausted from lack of sleep to angry at my boss. If you cannot distinguish between these states, you cannot fix them. You are trying to repair a precision engine with a sledgehammer. This chapter is about wiping the windshield clean. We are going to move you from vague moods to high-definition data. We are going to install a dashboard that tells you exactly what is overheating, what is running low, and where you are heading. Without this inner clarity, every other skill in this book is useless. You cannot regulate a feeling you cannot name, and you cannot communicate a feeling you do not understand. The high cost of blindness. You cannot manage what you cannot see. It is a simple engineering principle that applies directly to your psychology. When your emotions remain unseen and unnamed, they do not disappear. They go underground and run the show from the shadows. This is why you find yourself snapping at a friend for a small mistake, only to realize hours later that you were actually seething about an email you received that morning. The unseen emotion hijacked your behavior because you never looked it in the eye. This lack of clarity is the root of the phrase, "I don't know why I reacted like that." That sentence is an admission that you are a passenger in your own life. When you lack clarity, you are constantly surprised by your own outbursts or shutdowns. You feel like a victim of your biology. But the moment you turn the lights on, that changes. Clarity is the first step toward control. When you can see the mechanism, you can stop the machine. Precision beats intensity every time. There is a massive difference between feeling destroyed and feeling disappointed. One is a catastrophe that paralyzes you. The other is a specific problem you can solve. When you lack specific labels, your brain defaults to the most extreme, dramatic interpretation of the signal. Vague dread feels infinite and unmanageable. Focused awareness, however, shrinks the monster down to its actual size. It turns "I can't handle this" into "I am feeling embarrassed right now," and that is uncomfortable, but it is not fatal. Ultimately, inner clarity builds a quiet, unshakable confidence. It is the confidence of a pilot who knows exactly what every gauge on the panel means. You stop being afraid of your own reactions because you know you can track them. You can walk into a tense negotiation or a difficult family dinner knowing that whatever feeling arises, you will catch it, name it, and deal with it, rather than being swept away by it. From fog to dashboard, the technical term for what we are building is emotional granularity. This is the ability to distinguish between similar emotions rather than lumping them together. It is the difference between a grainy, black and white photo and a 4K video. Research shows that people with high emotional granularity, those who can tell the difference between annoyed, frustrated, and indignant, are healthier, recover faster from stress, and make better decisions. To get there, we have to stop treating our inner life as mysterious chaos and start treating it as readable signals. We do this by activating metacognition, which is simply the mind watching itself. Instead of being the anger, you become the observer of the anger. This slight detachment is the secret to sanity. The mechanism for this is the body-thought-label loop. Emotions are not just abstract thoughts. They are physiological events. They start in the body. A tight jaw, a heavy chest, a buzzing in the stomach. These are raw data points. Most people ignore the body until it is screaming in pain, but the data is there all the time. You combine that physical sensation with the story your mind is telling, the narrative about who is wrong, what is dangerous, or what is unfair. When you fuse the body signal with the mental story, you get the accurate label. You need to build a personal vocabulary bank. Most adults operate with the emotional vocabulary of a toddler: mad, sad, glad, scared. That is not enough for the complex life you lead. You need to expand your palette. Under anger, you need to find words like resentful, irritated, furious, betrayed, and defensive. Under fear, you need anxious, terrified, hesitant, insecure, and overwhelmed. The more precise the word, the more control you have. As the neuroscientist Dan Siegel says, name it to tame it. When you put a precise word to a feeling, you physically reduce the activity in the amygdala, the brain's alarm center, and activate the prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain that thinks and plans. The lies we tell about looking inward. There is a resistance to doing this work. You might believe that if you focus on your feelings, you will drown in them. You worry that if you open the door to your anxiety or your sadness, it will flood the room and you will never get anything done. The opposite is true. Emotions are like children tugging at your sleeve. If you ignore them, they get louder and more destructive. If you turn around, acknowledge them, and name what they want, they often settle down. Brief, structured check-ins reduce rumination because they give the emotion the attention it is demanding, allowing it to pass through. You might also tell yourself that you don't have time for this. You are busy, you have deadlines, you have responsibilities. This is a delusion. Unexamined emotions waste more time than any other factor in your life. Think about the hours lost to an argument caused by misdirected anger. Think about the days of productivity lost to a vague fog of unaddressed burnout. Clarity is a performance tool. It is not a luxury spa treatment for your mind. It is the maintenance required to keep the machine running at top speed. Another common fear is that if you name an emotion, you are cementing it, that by saying, "I am jealous," you are making it true and permanent. But labels are descriptions, not sentences. They are weather reports. Saying it is raining does not make it rain forever. It just tells you to grab an umbrella. Unnamed states linger longer precisely because they are vague. They hang around like a bad smell with no source. When you name them, you give them boundaries, and things with boundaries can be managed. The body story label protocol. We are going to turn this theory into a mechanical routine you can practice anywhere. It is called the body story label routine, and it takes less than 60 seconds. First, scan the body. Stop thinking and start sensing. Where is the tension? Is your throat tight? Is your stomach churning? Is your face hot? Do you feel heavy and lethargic or buzzing and restless? Do not judge these sensations. Just note them as raw data. This grounds you in reality and pulls you out of the hypothetical loops in your head. Second, catch the story. What is the ticker tape running across your mind? They don't respect me. I'm going to fail this presentation. I wish I was anywhere else. He thinks he's better than me. This narrative provides the context for the physical sensation. Third, apply the label. Combine the two. High energy plus they don't respect me equals indignation. Low energy, I'm going to fail equals dread. Tight throat, I wish I was anywhere else equals guilt. Find the word that clicks. You will feel a tiny sensation of relief, a mental, yes, that's it, when you land on the right one. To make this a habit, use 3 daily micro check-ins. Do not wait for a crisis. In the morning, ask, what am I waking up with? You might find a residue of anxiety from a dream or a heaviness about the day ahead. Catch it early. At midday, ask, where am I now? You might realize you have been holding your breath since 10 a.m. In the evening, do a quick review. What were the 3 strongest feelings I felt today? This builds your pattern recognition software. Over time, you will start to map your recurring triggers. You will notice that every time you have a meeting with a specific person, you feel diminished. You will notice that Sunday nights always bring a specific flavor of melancholy. You will see the repeating stories, I'm not enough, people are dangerous, I have to do everything myself. Once you see the pattern, you can stop being a victim of it. Hacking your awareness. You do not need to write pages in a journal to get this benefit. Use simple prompts to cut through the noise. Fill in the blank. Right now I feel label because story. That is it, 1 sentence. Limit the process to 90 seconds. This prevents you from spiraling into why and keeps you focused on what. We are looking for data, not psychoanalysis. Keep a menu of emotion words on your phone or on a sticky note at your desk. When you are learning a new language, you need a cheat sheet. If you only know mad and sad, you are emotionally illiterate. Having a list of words like apprehensive, grateful, wary, nostalgic, and exasperated gives your brain options it wouldn't otherwise consider. Turn neutral moments into practice reps. When you are standing in line for coffee or waiting for an elevator, do a 10-second scan. Shoulders tight, mind rushing, feeling impatient. Practicing in calm moments builds the neural pathways so that when you are in a high-stakes argument, the skill is available to you. If you only practice during disasters, you will fail. Finally, pair awareness with one tiny action. Inner clarity should lead to motion, not stagnation. After you name the feeling, ask, what is one small thing I can do right now? If you are overwhelmed, the action might be to write down the next 3 tasks. If you are tense, the action might be to drop your shoulders. This trains your brain that noticing an emotion leads to a helpful adjustment, reinforcing the habit. The payoff, quiet confidence. What does success look like here? A good outcome is that you can name at least 5 distinct emotions you experienced today, rather than just saying, it was a busy day. You will start to notice emotional shifts as they happen, rather than realizing 3 days later that you have been depressed. You will feel a slight gap opening up between the trigger and your reaction, a moment of choice that wasn't there before. An excellent outcome is predictability. You will know that when I am tired and I get critical feedback, I feel shame. Because you know the equation, you can prepare for it. You can intervene in your own spirals earlier. Instead of a bad mood lasting 3 days, it lasts 3 hours. You become a better communicator because you can say, I am feeling frustrated about the timeline, instead of just sighing aggressively in a meeting. The best outcome is a fundamental shift in your relationship with yourself. You stop treating emotions as enemies to be suppressed or weaknesses to be hidden. You treat them as high-value information. You become less afraid of your own intensity because you know you can read it. You walk through the world with the quiet confidence of someone who is never lost because they always have their internal GPS turned on. Traps on the path to clarity. There are a few ways to mess this up. The most common is overthinking disguised as awareness. You can get stuck staring at your own navel, analyzing every flutter of your heart, asking, why do I feel this? What does it mean about my childhood? That is not clarity, that is rumination. The fix is strict time limits. Label it, then pivot to action. Focus on now and next, not then and why. Another trap is turning labels into identity. There is a massive difference between saying, I feel anxious and I am an anxious person. The first is a passing weather state. The second is a permanent cage. Always use process language. This emotion is moving through me. I am experiencing anger. Remind yourself constantly that you are the sky and the emotions are just the clouds passing through. The sky is not the cloud. Finally, do not ignore the body. Intellectuals love to live in their heads. They try to figure out their emotions like a math problem, but emotions are biological. If you are disconnected from your physical sensations, your labels will be guesses, not truths. If you are stuck, stop thinking and ask, where is the tension? The body never lies. Now you have the dashboard. You can see the speed, the fuel, and the warning lights. You are no longer flying blind in the fog. But seeing the data is only the first step. The dashboard might tell you that you are terrified or that you are furious. The question is, what do you do with that information when you have to make a split-second decision? How do you stop that fear from making you freeze or that anger from making you reckless? We have cleared the windshield. Now we need to learn how to drive the car without crashing it. We are about to enter the engine room of decision-making, where we will discover that everything you thought you knew about being logical is wrong. Chapter 4. Feeling logic. You think you are a rational creature. You pride yourself on looking at the facts, weighing the pros and cons, and making a calculated choice. But if that were true, you would never send a text message you regret 5 minutes later. You would never procrastinate on a project you know is vital for your career. You would never agree to a commitment you have zero desire to fulfill just because you felt awkward saying no in the moment. The truth is uncomfortable. You are not a thinking machine that feels. You are a feeling machine that thinks. Most of the decisions you regret, the bridge-burning email, the impulsive purchase, the silence when you should have spoken up, were not logic failures. They were emotional hijackings. You made a decision to alleviate a temporary feeling of anxiety, anger, or guilt, and you used logic to justify it after the damage was done. This chapter is about fixing that broken circuit. We are not going to teach you how to turn your emotions off so you can be logical. That is impossible, and frankly, it is dangerous. Instead, we are going to introduce you to a concept that sounds like a contradiction, but is actually the secret weapon of every high performer: feeling logic. This is the art of using your emotions as critical data inputs for your reasoning, rather than allowing them to drive the car off the cliff. The high cost of fake rationality. Most people believe that to make a good decision, they must suppress their emotions. They sit in a meeting, feeling a knot of dread in their stomach about a proposed project, but they tell themselves, be professional, look at the spreadsheet. They ignore the dread. They approve the project. 3 months later, the project fails exactly for the reasons that the dread was trying to highlight: unrealistic timelines or a lack of resources. When you ignore emotions, you're not being rational, you are being blind. Emotions are data. Fear is often a signal of risk or unpreparedness. Anger is often a signal of boundary violation. Guilt is often a signal of values misalignment. If you strip this data out of your decision-making process, you are making choices with only half the available intelligence. The loser mindset in this arena is the person who claims to be purely logical but is actually a slave to their ego. They make aggressive business moves not because the market dictates it, but because they feel insecure and need to prove dominance. They refuse to apologize not because they are right, but because shame feels too heavy to bear. They are puppets on strings, dancing to the tune of their unexamined feelings while shouting about how rational they are. The winner mindset is different. The winner recognizes that emotional honesty is a prerequisite for clear thinking. They know that if they do not factor their emotional risk into a decision, the decision will fail. They understand that a choice made in a state of anger is a different animal than a choice made in a state of calm, and they treat those states with the respect they deserve. Hot states versus cool states. To master feeling logic, you must understand the physics of your own mind. You exist in two distinct modes, hot states and cool states. A cool state is where you likely are right now. You are calm, your heart rate is resting, and your prefrontal cortex, the CEO of your brain, is fully online. In a cool state, you care about long-term goals. You want to be healthy, you want to save money, and you want to be a patient partner. You make plans that align with your values. A hot state is what happens when you are triggered. Someone insults you, you get a terrifying medical result. You are exhausted and overwhelmed. In a hot state, your biology shifts, your vision narrows, your time horizon collapses from 10 years to 10 seconds. The CEO of your brain goes on vacation and the primitive survival centers take over. In a hot state, you do not care about your values, you care about relief. You want to win the argument now. You want to escape the pressure now. The disaster happens when you let the hot state make decisions that the cool state has to pay for. This is the core of the problem. You commit to a diet in a cool state, but you break it in a hot state of stress. You promise to be calm in a cool state, but you scream in a hot state of frustration. Feeling logic is the bridge between these two worlds. It is the practice of using your cool state to design rules and guardrails that protect you when the heat rises. The 3 lies that ruin decisions. Before we build the framework, we must dismantle the myths that keep you stuck in reactive loops. The first myth is, just be rational and ignore your feelings. We have touched on this, but let's go deeper. Pure suppression leads to one of 2 outcomes, explosion or numbness. If you consistently shove down your frustration to keep the peace, you are not solving the problem. You are pressurizing a tank. Eventually, that tank ruptures, usually over something trivial. Alternatively, you become so good at numbing that you lose access to positive emotions like joy and curiosity. Good strategy requires you to look at the feeling, acknowledge it, and then decide if it is helpful. The second myth is always trust your gut. This is dangerous advice. Your gut is not a magical oracle. It is a repository of your past experiences. Sometimes that experience is wisdom, but often your gut is just your trauma or your bias talking. Your gut might tell you not to trust a new colleague simply because they remind you of an ex-partner. Your gut might tell you to avoid a public speaking opportunity because you were laughed at in 3rd grade. Feeling logic demands that you audit your gut. You listen to it, but you verify it against facts. The third myth is, time will solve it. Procrastination is rarely a time management issue. It is an emotion management issue. You delay the decision not because you need more data, but because you want to avoid the anxiety of choosing. You tell yourself you are waiting for the right moment, but you are actually hiding. Delay without active reflection does not bring clarity. It just extends the torture of uncertainty. The pause, map, decide framework. So how do we actually do this? How do we integrate the heat of emotion with the cool of logic in real time? We use a 3-step protocol: pause, map, decide. The first step is the pause. In a high-stakes moment, your instinct is to speed up. You want to reply to the email immediately. You want to snap back at the insult instantly. You must do the opposite. You must force a mechanical gap between the stimulus and the response. This can be 10 seconds or 10 minutes. This pause is not passivity. It is a tactical maneuver to let the initial chemical wave of emotion crest and begin to recede. Without the pause, there is no logic. The second step is the map. In that pause, you ask 3 rapid-fire questions. First, what am I feeling? Use the labels from the previous chapter. Second, what is the story I am telling myself? Third, what is the trigger? This is where you engage the prefrontal cortex. By analyzing the emotion, you step out of it. You realize I am feeling defensive because his tone reminded me of my father, and the story I am telling myself is that he thinks I am incompetent. Now you have a map of the terrain. The third step is the decide. Now that you see the emotion as data, I am feeling defensive, you can choose an action that aligns with your values. You ask, what would my best self do in this situation? Perhaps you still need to push back against the colleague, but you do it with professional firmness rather than petulant anger. You use the energy of the emotion, the fuel, without acting out the impulse, the crash. Cool state planning. The most powerful application of feeling logic happens before the crisis even starts. You know your patterns. You know that when you are tired, you get irritable. You know that when you talk about finances, you get anxious. You can use your cool state to pre-plan your responses. This is called if-then planning. You write the script when you are calm. If I feel myself getting heated in the budget meeting, then I will take a sip of water and say, I need a moment to process this. If I feel the urge to send a passive-aggressive email, then I will save it as a draft and wait 24 hours. You are essentially creating a contract with your future self. You are acknowledging that your hot state self is not trustworthy, so you are putting guardrails in place. This is not weakness, it is strategic brilliance. It is how high performers operate. They do not rely on willpower in the moment, they rely on systems they built in advance. Giving emotions a vote, not a veto. Think of your mind as a boardroom. In the loser model, the emotion stands up, screams, and everyone else in the room obeys. In the suppression model, the emotion is gagged and thrown out of the room, only to cut the power lines from the basement. In the feeling logic model, the emotion has a seat at the table. When fear speaks up and says, "This is dangerous," the CEO, logic, listens. The CEO says, "Thank you, fear. That is valuable data. Why do you think it is dangerous?" Fear explains the risks. Logic weighs those risks against the potential rewards and the available resources. Then, the CEO takes a vote. Fear gets a vote. Ambition gets a vote. Ethics gets a vote. Logic counts the votes and makes the final decision. Sometimes fear is right and you back down. Sometimes fear is outvoted and you proceed anyway, but with more caution because you listened. The emotion gets a voice, but it does not get a veto. It contributes to the decision, but it does not dictate it. The rules of engagement. To make this practical, you need simple decision rules that you can access when your brain is foggy. Rule number 1. If you are emotionally flooded, you delay big decisions. If you are rating your intensity at an 8 out of 10, you are legally drunk on cortisol. You do not sign contracts, break up relationships, or send company-wide emails in this state. You wait until you are back to a 4. Rule number 2. The tomorrow test. Ask yourself, if I take this action, will I be proud of it tomorrow morning? This simple question forces you to project yourself into a future cool state. It cuts through the immediate gratification of the hot state. If the answer is no, I will feel ashamed, then you do not do it, no matter how good it would feel in the moment. Rule number 3. Debrief your decisions. After you make a choice, look back at it. Ask, what was I feeling? How did that shape my move? If you yelled at your child, do not just wallow in guilt. Analyze it. I was feeling overwhelmed by work, and I used anger to try to control the chaos. That is data. Now you can adjust your script for next time. The payoff. When you start applying feeling logic, the results are immediate. You will catch yourself on the edge of the cliff. You will feel the impulse to jump, to scream, to quit, to buy, and you will pause. You will map. You will see the emotion for what it is, a temporary weather pattern, not a command from God, and you will step back. You will start to make fewer promises you cannot keep, because you will recognize that your excitement is writing checks your schedule cannot cash. You will stop burning bridges, because you will recognize that your righteous indignation is just a defense mechanism. People will start to notice. They will see that you are less reactive, more thoughtful. You will become someone others trust to think clearly when everyone else is losing their minds. But there is a catch. Even with the best feeling logic, even with the clearest map and the strongest pause, there are moments when the wave is simply too high. There are moments when the physiological storm of emotion is so intense that it bypasses your reasoning entirely. You know you shouldn't react, you know it's a bad idea, but your body moves before your mind can stop it. What do you do when the logic fails? What do you do when the adrenaline is so high that you cannot think your way out of it? You need more than a map. You need a physical override switch. You need to know how to grab the controls of your own nervous system and force it to power down. That is exactly what we're going to learn next. Chapter 5, State Control. You know the feeling. It starts as a tightness in your chest or a heat rising up the back of your neck. Someone says something dismissive in a meeting, or you open an email that feels like a personal attack, and suddenly your vision narrows, your heart rate spikes. Your brain, which was capable of complex strategic thought 30 seconds ago, is now screaming a single command, attack. Or perhaps it screams, hide. In that moment, you are not in charge. The external event has reached inside your chest and pulled a lever, and you are simply the puppet dancing on the string. If you act now, you will say something you regret. If you shut down now, you will lose respect. You are experiencing an emotional hijacking, and without the right tools, you are just a passenger in a vehicle careening off the road. This chapter is about climbing into the driver's seat. We are not talking about calming down or thinking happy thoughts. We are talking about state control. This is the ability to deliberately choose your physiological and psychological condition in real time. It is the difference between having an emotion and being consumed by one. By the end of this chapter, you will stop hoping you feel better and start engineering the state you need to win. The cost of being owned. If you cannot regulate your emotional state, you are dangerous to yourself and others. This sounds harsh, but it is the reality of the nervous system. When you are unregulated, you are unpredictable. One snarky comment from a colleague can derail your entire afternoon, stealing your focus and draining your energy. You become a person who can be easily manipulated. Anyone who knows your triggers can push a button and get a reaction. This lack of regulation destroys trust. Leadership, parenting, and partnership are all fundamentally about stability. People look to you to see how to react when things go wrong. If you explode or collapse every time the pressure rises, you signal that you are not safe. You signal that you are at the mercy of your environment. Your body pays the tax for this too. Chronic lack of regulation keeps you in a state of low-grade fight or flight. You feel it as a clenched jaw, a restless leg, or that exhaustion that hits you at 3 p.m. This is not just stress. This is your nervous system running the engine at redline while the car is in park. Learning to regulate is not just about being nicer, it is about stopping the wear and tear on your biological machinery. The 4 doors of regulation. Most people have only one strategy for regulation: brute force suppression. They feel the anger rising and they mentally shove it down, gritting their teeth. This is exhausting and ineffective. It is like trying to hold a beach ball underwater. Eventually, it's going to fly up and hit you in the face. Real state control is a process, not a muscle contest. To understand it, we have to look at how an emotion is constructed. It doesn't just appear out of nowhere. It follows a sequence. And because it follows a sequence, there are 4 distinct doors where you can intervene to change the outcome. Door number 1 is the situation. This is the most obvious and least used strategy. If a situation is triggering you, change the situation. If the news makes you anxious, turn it off. If a specific route to work makes you rageful, take a different route. If a conversation is heating up, step out of the room. You are not running away. You are modifying the input to save the system. Door number 2 is attention. Once you are in the situation, you can choose what to focus on. In every crisis, there are multiple things to look at. You can stare at the person who is insulting you, which will fuel your anger, or you can focus on your breathing, which will ground you. You can focus on the problem, or you can focus on the solution. Where your attention goes, your energy flows. Shifting your gaze, literally or metaphorically, shifts your state. Door number 3 is meaning. This is the cognitive door. It is about the story you tell yourself. If someone cuts you off in traffic, the story, "they are disrespecting me," creates rage. The story, "they must be rushing to the hospital," creates compassion, or at least indifference. The event is the same, the state is different. This is called cognitive reappraisal. You are not lying to yourself, you are choosing the interpretation that keeps you functional. Door number 4 is response. This is the final door, used when the emotion is already fully present in your body. You cannot stop the adrenaline now, but you can modulate the expression. You can deliberately slow your voice down. You can force your shoulders to drop. You can take 10 deep, rhythmic breaths. By changing the physical output, you send a signal back to your brain that you are safe, which eventually lowers the emotional intensity. The myths that keep you stuck. We have to clear away some cultural garbage that prevents people from using these doors effectively. The first myth is that real strength is not showing emotion. We confuse stoicism with suppression. The person who sits stone-faced while their team falls apart is not strong. They are likely terrified of vulnerability or completely checked out. Real strength is feeling the fear or the anger deeply, acknowledging it, and then regulating it so you can act in line with your values. It is the difference between a dam that holds back water until it bursts and a hydroelectric plant that channels the water to create power. The second myth is the venting myth. People believe that if they are angry, they need to get it out by screaming or punching a pillow. Research shows this is largely false. Uncontrolled venting often acts as a rehearsal. It reinforces the neural pathways of anger, making you more likely to be angry in the future. There is a difference between constructive sharing, "I am feeling really frustrated right now," and emotional dumping. Venting, without reflection, is just spinning your wheels in the mud. The third myth is the distraction trap. You might think, if I just scroll through social media or watch TV, the feeling will go away. Distraction is a valid short-term tool, door number 2, but if it is your only strategy, you are just hitting the snooze button on your problems. The emotion is still there, waiting for you to turn the screen off. Avoidance is not regulation. Building your toolkit. You need a toolkit that is simple enough to use when your IQ has dropped 20 points because of stress. You do not need a philosophy degree. You need a wrench. Start with the pre-game routine. High-level athletes do not just walk onto the field. They have a ritual to get into the right state. You should too. Identify the recurring tough situations in your life: the weekly budget meeting, the phone call with your mother, the performance review. Before you enter that room, take 60 seconds. Take 3 deep breaths to lower your cortisol. Set one clear intention: I will stay curious. Remind yourself of one helpful truth: this is not about me. Do not wait for the crisis to start regulating. Regulate before you walk through the door. Next, develop an emergency script. When you are triggered, your language centers shut down. You need a preloaded line of code to stop the spiral. It could be internal: pause, I don't have to act this out. It could be external, something you say to buy time: I need a moment to think about that. Memorize this script. Drill it until it is automatic. When the heat rises, you won't have to think. You will just recite the line that saves you. Finally, use micro movements. Emotions are physical, so the solution must be physical. If you feel stuck or frozen, stand up. If you are agitated, plant your feet firmly on the floor and push down. Change your posture. A change in the body forces a change in the mind. Use movement as a circuit breaker to interrupt the flow of the emotional hijack. The power of self-compassion. There is a secret weapon in state control that tough-minded people often overlook: self-compassion. This is not about pity, it is about efficiency. When you lose your temper or shut down, the natural reaction is to beat yourself up. I can't believe I did that. I'm such an idiot. This shame spiral creates a secondary layer of negative emotion that you now have to regulate. It prolongs the recovery time. Self-compassion cuts the lag time. After a spike, you simply say, "That was a human reaction," Anyone under this pressure might have snapped. Now, how do I fix it? You treat yourself like a teammate who missed a shot, not an enemy. You acknowledge the mistake, you repair the damage, and you get back in the game. This allows you to learn from the failure rather than drowning in it. The goal, the emotional stabilizer. When you commit to this practice, the results are profound. A good outcome is that you have 2 or 3 moves you can actually remember to use when you are upset. You recover from bad moods in minutes instead of hours. You stop having full-blown meltdowns over minor inconveniences. An excellent outcome is that you become deliberate. You start to shape your state to match your task. You can dial up your energy for a presentation and dial it down for a listening session. You are no longer one speed. You have a gearbox and you know how to shift. The best outcome is that you become the emotional stabilizer for everyone around you. This is the essence of leadership. When the room is panicking, your regulated state acts as a contagion. People feel your calm, and their nervous systems begin to align with yours. You become the eye of the storm. You trust yourself to handle whatever comes, not because you are numb, but because you know how to steer. A warning on suppression. There is a danger here. It is easy to use these tools to become a robot. You can become so good at regulating that you tolerate situations that should be intolerable. You can breathe your way through a toxic job or reframe an abusive relationship until you are numb to the danger. Do not use regulation to silence your necessary signals. If you are constantly having to regulate massive amounts of anger or fear just to get through the day, the problem is not your state. The problem is your reality. Regulation is meant to keep you effective so you can change your life, not so you can endure a bad one forever. Also, do not forget to practice when you are calm. You cannot learn to swim during a hurricane. Use the small annoyances, the long line at the grocery store, the slow internet connection, as your training reps. If you can regulate your irritation over a spilled coffee, you are building the muscle to regulate your rage during a negotiation. You now have the keys to the vehicle. You understand that emotions are not weather events that happen to you, they are energy states that you can influence. You know the 4 doors. You have the scripts. You are ready to stop reacting and start driving. But there is a missing piece. You can be perfectly regulated on the inside, calm, cool, collected, and still completely fail to connect with other people. You can have the inner peace of a monk and still come across as cold, distant, or unreadable to your team and your family. Inner clarity and state control are private victories. To win in the world, you have to turn that internal signal into an external broadcast. You have to take what is inside and get it across the gap between you and another human being without distortion. That is the art of the next chapter. Chapter 6, Honest Signals. You are a radio tower. You are broadcasting 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. You broadcast with your words, yes, but you broadcast louder with your silence, your posture, the tension in your forehead, and the speed of your breath. You cannot turn the transmitter off. You can only choose what signal you send. Most people believe they are mysterious. They think that if they don't say, "I am angry," nobody knows they are angry. This is a delusion. Human beings are wired to detect threat and incongruence. When you say, "I'm fine," but your jaw is clenched and your eyes are cold, you are not hiding. You are sending a mixed signal. And to the human nervous system, a mixed signal is a danger signal. It creates noise, confusion, and distrust. We have spent the last few chapters building your internal machinery: awareness, logic, and regulation. Now we have to open the gates. We have to take that high-definition internal data and transmit it across the gap to another person without distortion. This is the art of honest signals. It is the difference between being a person who is hard to read and a person whose clarity commands respect. The trust equation. Every time you interact with someone, their primitive brain asks one question: is this person safe or dangerous? Safety does not mean nice. Safety means predictable and congruent. If you are smiling while you are seething, you are dangerous because you are hiding something. The other person senses the disconnect. They might not be able to articulate it, but they will feel a vague sense of unease. They will pull back. They will withhold their own truth. Trust erodes not because of conflict, but because of the fog of mixed signals. When you fail to express your emotions clearly, you create invisible problems. You might think you are being noble by swallowing your disappointment about a missed deadline, but you are actually withholding critical data. Because you haven't spoken, the other person assumes everything is on track. They cannot fix a problem they do not know exists. Meanwhile, your resentment grows in the dark. It accumulates like toxic waste until it leaks out sideways, usually as sarcasm, passive-aggressive delays, or a sudden explosion over something trivial. On the other extreme, we have the broadcasters of chaos. These are the people who believe that honesty means dumping every raw emotion onto the people around them in real time. They confuse authenticity with a lack of filter. This causes emotional collateral damage. If you spray your unfiltered anger or anxiety over your team or your family, you are not communicating. You are evacuating your distress into them. You exhaust them. Eventually, they stop listening to the signal because the volume is always too high. The myth of radical immediacy. We need to dismantle a pervasive cultural lie, the idea that you should always say exactly what you feel, the moment you feel it. This is often framed as being real or living your truth. In reality, radical immediacy is often just a lack of regulation disguised as a virtue. Authenticity does not require immediacy. You can be completely authentic by saying, I am feeling a lot of frustration right now, and I need to process it for an hour so I can discuss it with you respectfully. That is an honest signal. It tells the truth about your state. I am frustrated, and your need. I need time. Screaming at someone because you are triggered is not authenticity, it is reactivity. Self-control enhances your signal. It does not fake it. There is also the professional myth, the idea that being professional means being a robot. We are taught that emotions have no place at work. This is false. Composure has a place at work. Resilience has a place at work. But being emotionless makes you untrustworthy. People follow leaders who are human. If a project fails and the leader acts like nothing happened, the team feels gaslit. If the leader says, I am disappointed by these results and I am worried about our timeline, but I am confident we can fix it, that is an honest signal. It validates the team's reality while providing direction. The architecture of a signal. To send honest signals, you must understand display rules. These are the unwritten laws of your culture, your family, or your workplace that dictate what you are allowed to show. In some families, anger is forbidden, but sadness is allowed. In some corporate cultures, enthusiasm is mandatory and doubt is punished. You likely have a default setting based on these old rules. Perhaps you learn to smile when you are hurt, or to go silent when you are angry. To master honest signals, you need expressive flexibility. This is the ability to adjust your dial. It is not about being fake, it is about tuning your broadcast to the receiver. You can be honest about your anger with your spouse in a different way than you are honest about your anger with your boss. The core truth remains the same, but the packaging shifts to ensure the message actually lands. This brings us to the core mechanic of this chapter. How do you actually say the hard thing? How do you move from inner clarity to outer expression without blowing up the bridge? The feeling, reason, request protocol. When you need to communicate an emotion, especially a difficult one, you need a structure. When we are stressed, our verbal IQ drops. We ramble, we blame, we justify. To counter this, we use a simple three-part template: feeling, reason, request. First, state the feeling. Use the I statement. I feel frustrated. I feel anxious. I feel confused. This is disarming. It is a report on your internal state, which is an irrefutable fact. No one can argue with, I feel sad. They can argue with you are being mean, but they cannot argue with your internal weather report. By owning the feeling, you take the gun off the table. You are not attacking them, you are revealing you. Second, state the reason. This links the emotion to a specific event or behavior, not a character flaw. Connect the feeling to the facts using the word because. I feel frustrated because I didn't receive the report by the deadline we agreed on. Notice the precision. You are not saying because you are lazy or because you never listen. You are pointing to the data. This keeps the conversation grounded in reality rather than judgment. Third, and most importantly, make the request. This is the step most people forget. They dump the feeling and the reason and then stop, leaving the other person to guess what to do. You must offer a path forward, and I would like us to agree on a new timeline right now. And I would like to understand what happened. Put it together. I feel anxious because the client hasn't responded, and I would like to schedule a quick call to decide our next move. This is clean. It is honest. It carries no blame, yet it hides nothing. It transforms a vague emotional cloud into a concrete problem we can solve together. Tuning the broadcast. You can practice this in low-stakes situations. Do not wait for your marriage to be on the brink or your job to be on the line. Use the protocol when the waiter brings the wrong order or when a friend is 5 minutes late. I feel a bit rushed because we have the movie starting soon, so I'd like to get the check now. Get the reps in when your heart rate is under 100 beats per minute. As you practice, pay attention to your volume. I do not mean the decibel level of your voice, though that matters. I mean the intensity of the signal. Paradoxically, when you are discussing high-intensity emotions, you should lower your physical volume. When you yell, the other person's nervous system goes into defense mode. They stop processing words and start processing threat. If you want your anger to be heard, speak it quietly. Slow down. Use pauses. A whisper can be more terrifying and more effective than a scream because it signals control. You must also respect timing and capacity. Just because you are ready to transmit does not mean the other person is ready to receive. If your partner just walked in the door after a 12-hour shift, their receiver is broken. If you launch into a heavy emotional broadcast, you are setting yourself up for failure. Part of honest signaling is checking the line. I have something important I want to share with you about how I'm feeling. Is now a good time, or should we wait until after dinner? That question alone builds immense trust. The bridge of partial disclosure. Sometimes the truth is too heavy to carry across the bridge all at once. You might be feeling a level 10 rage, and you know that if you open your mouth, you will violate the feeling reason request protocol and just start shouting. In these moments, use partial disclosure. You can say, I am feeling incredibly angry right now, more than I want to be. I'm trying to stay calm because I want to solve this, but I am struggling. Look at what that signal achieves. You are admitting to the intensity, I am incredibly angry, without acting it out. You are stating your positive intent. I want to solve this. You are asking for grace without asking for permission to be abusive. This is a bridge. It allows the other person to see the effort you are making. It turns your internal struggle into a shared context. The danger of over-editing. There is a trap on the other side of this road. You can become so obsessed with the perfect signal, the perfect I statement, the perfect tone, that you edit yourself into invisibility. You become so careful that you cease to be real. If you find yourself rehearsing a sentence for 3 days, you are over-editing. At some point, a messy signal is better than no signal. It is okay to say, I don't know exactly how to say this, and I'm afraid I'm going to get it wrong, but I feel hurt by what happened. That preamble is an honest signal in itself. It signals vulnerability and humility. Do not confuse clarity with cruelty. Some people use honesty as a weapon. They say, I'm just being honest, after delivering a devastating critique of someone's character. That is not an honest signal. That is an attack wrapped in a virtue. Before you speak, run a quick filter. Is this true? Is this necessary? Is the tone respectful? You can deliver the hardest truth in the world if the tone signals, I am on your side. The outcome, a clean connection. When you commit to honest signals, your relationships change texture. They become cleaner. The static noise of, what did they mean by that, fades away. You stop wasting energy decoding the silence of others because you are modeling clarity. People will start to trust you in a new way. They will know that if you are unhappy, you will say so. This means that when you are happy, they believe you. When you say, "Great job," they know it isn't flattery, it is data. You become a person of weight and substance. You will find that conflicts, while still uncomfortable, become shorter. Instead of a 3-day Cold War, you have a 20-minute conversation using the protocol. You repair the rupture and move on. You stop carrying the heavy baggage of unsaid things. But here is the catch. You can master your internal world. You can master your external broadcast. You can send the perfect signal, clear as a bell, respectful and honest. But communication is a loop. You are not just a transmitter, you are also a receiver. And the world is full of people who have not read this book. They are broadcasting mixed signals, hidden agendas, and raw, unregulated noise. How do you navigate a world where everyone else is broadcasting in code? How do you hear what people are not saying? To survive the social wilderness, you need to upgrade your antenna. You need to learn to see the invisible. Chapter 7, Social Radar. You are walking through a minefield. Every day, you navigate a landscape filled with hidden explosives, buried traps, and invisible tripwires. These hazards are not made of metal and gunpowder. They are made of unsaid resentments, hidden anxieties, and silent disagreements. If you walk through this field with your eyes closed, relying only on what people explicitly say to you, you are going to get hurt. You will step on a fine that actually means furious, and you will be baffled by the explosion that follows. Most people navigate their social and professional lives with a blindfold on. They assume that if someone is smiling, they are happy. They assume that if someone is silent, they agree. They project their own feelings onto others and call it empathy. This is not just lazy, it is dangerous. To survive and thrive in a complex world, you need to take the blindfold off. You need to build a social radar. This chapter is about turning your attention outward. We have spent a lot of time inside your head, mapping your emotions, regulating your state, and crafting your signals. Now, we cross the gap. We are going to train you to read the raw data of other people's nervous systems. We are going to move beyond the guessing games and the projection and teach you how to see what is actually happening in the room before a word is even spoken. The high cost of social blindness. Relationships live or die on accurate reading. Think about the last time you felt truly disconnected from someone. It probably wasn't because you disagreed on a fact. It was because you felt unseen. You were broadcasting distress, and they were responding with logic or indifference. When you misread the emotional state of a partner, a boss, or a client, you create unnecessary friction. You offer a solution when they need validation. You crack a joke when they need seriousness. These micro misses accumulate, building a wall of distrust. Social radar is your early warning system. In business and in life, disasters rarely happen out of nowhere. They are almost always preceded by subtle signals. The team member who stops making eye contact in meetings is broadcasting disengagement weeks before they quit. The partner who becomes unusually polite is broadcasting distance long before they ask for a break. If you have a sharp radar, you catch the tension while it is still a whisper. You can address the discomfort before it hardens into a crisis. If your radar is off, you are constantly blindsided, left wondering why people are so unpredictable. Furthermore, empathy is a hard performance metric. We often treat empathy as a soft, fuzzy bonus trait, but it is actually the foundation of influence. You cannot motivate a person if you do not know what they are feeling. You cannot negotiate a deal if you do not understand the other side's fear. People follow leaders who understand them. They confide in friends who get them. If you want to build coalitions, teams, or partnerships that actually work, you have to be able to read the emotional weather. Tuning the antenna. To build this radar, you have to understand what you are actually looking for. You're not trying to be a psychic, you're trying to be a data analyst. Human beings are biological billboards. We advertise our internal states through microcues that are often impossible to suppress completely. You need to learn to observe the hardware. Stop listening to the words for a moment and look at the face. Look for the micro shifts, the tightening of the jaw that signals restraint, the slight furrow of the brow that signals confusion, the flatness in the eyes that signals boredom. Look at the body. Is their posture open and fluid, or is it rigid and protected? Are they leaning in, or are they slowly backing away? Listen to the music of the voice, not just the lyrics. The words might say, "I'm on board with this plan," but if the pitch is flat, the pace is slow, and there is a hesitation before the answer, the radar should be screaming, "Doubt." Silence is also data. There is a thoughtful silence, and there is a stony silence. Your job is to learn the difference. This requires you to engage two different types of empathy. There is affective empathy, which is feeling what they feel, your heart racing when they are scared. This is useful, but it can be exhausting. More important for the radar is cognitive empathy, or perspective taking. This is the ability to intellectually understand their worldview without necessarily drowning in their emotions. It relies on a concept called theory of mind, the realization that the other person has a completely different map of reality than you do. Their rudeness might be your efficiency. Their silence might be your thinking. Your radar works by trying to see their map, not by imposing yours. The intelligence trap and other lies. There are several myths that will jam your radar if you don't clear them out. The most common is the belief that high IQ guarantees high EQ. This is false. In fact, highly intelligent people are often the worst at reading others because they rely too heavily on logic. They assume that because an argument makes sense to them, the other person must be feeling good about it. They project their own rationality onto the room and miss the emotional reality entirely. Social radar is a separate, trainable skill that has nothing to do with your SAT score. Another dangerous myth is that empathy means agreement. People fear that if they truly understand someone's anger or grievance, they are validating it. This makes them defensive. You must distinguish between understanding and endorsing. You can look at someone who is screaming at you and think, "I fully understand that you feel betrayed and furious," while simultaneously thinking, "I do not agree with your facts, and I will not tolerate this behavior." Empathy strengthens your position because it gives you data. It does not weaken your boundaries. Finally, there is the digital myth, the idea that you can't read people over text or email. While it is harder, the cues are still there. The timing of a response is a signal. The length of the message is a signal. The sudden shift from emojis to formal punctuation is a massive signal. If you're paying attention, the digital world is full of emotional data. You just have to look closer. The listen, label, check loop. So how do we operationalize this? We use a mechanism called the listen, label, check loop. This is your scanning protocol. First, you listen. This means taking in the full picture. You are not just waiting for your turn to speak. You are watching the face, hearing the tone, and sensing the vibe. You are gathering raw data. Second, you label. Inside your own head, you form a hypothesis. You guess the emotion. They look overwhelmed. She sounds defensive. He seems eager to please. This step is crucial because it moves you from vague observation to specific analysis. Third, and this is the step everyone skips, you check. You never assume your radar is perfect. You must verify the reading. You do this by asking a gentle, open-ended question or making a tentative statement. "You seem a bit quiet today. Am I reading that right?" Or, "I'm sensing some hesitation about this timeline." This check changes everything. If you are right, the other person feels incredibly seen. They relax. They open up. If you are wrong, they correct you. "No, I'm not hesitant. I'm just thinking through the logistics." Now you have the correct data. You have calibrated your radar. Without the check, you are just hallucinating about other people's feelings. With the check, you are connecting. Advanced calibration techniques. To sharpen this skill, you need to practice when the stakes are low. Use your media consumption as a training ground. Watch an interview with a politician or a celebrity under pressure. Turn the sound off for a minute. Just watch the face, watch the hands, guess the emotion, then turn the sound on and see if the words match the body. Often, they won't. That discrepancy is where the truth lives. You should also study the people closest to you. Everyone has a tell. Your partner might get very quiet when they are angry, while your boss might get loud and jovial when they are nervous. Observe the baseline behavior so you can spot the deviation. If a chatty colleague suddenly goes silent, your radar should ping. If a stoic friend suddenly starts pacing, your radar should ping. Use this pattern recognition to intervene early. One of the most powerful moves you can make with a sharp radar is naming the elephant. When you walk into a room and the air is thick with tension, everyone feels it, but no one is saying it. This creates anxiety. If you can calmly and non-judgmentally name it, "I'm sensing some frustration in the room about how this project is going," you act as a pressure valve. You validate the group's reality. Usually, you will see shoulders drop and hear a collective exhale. You have made it safe to talk about what is really happening. The emotional translator. When you get good at this, the outcomes are transformative. You stop misreading situations. You stop taking things personally because you can see the fear or stress driving the other person's bad behavior. You ask more clarifying questions instead of making assumptions, which saves you hours of cleanup time later. At an excellent level, people start to confide in you. You become a safe harbor because you are one of the few people who actually notices how they are doing. You spot group tension before it becomes a fight and help redirect it. You navigate difficult personalities with ease because you can see the unmet needs behind the difficult behavior. At the highest level, you become an emotional translator. In complex negotiations or heated family arguments, you are the one who can say, "It sounds like John is worried about the risk, and Sarah is excited about the growth. Is that right?" You de-escalate the room by making everyone feel understood. You are trusted not just because you are smart, but because you get it. The dangers of deep reading. However, having a high-powered radar comes with risks. The biggest one is burnout. If you walk around with your antenna up all day, absorbing every ounce of sadness, anxiety, and anger from everyone you meet, you will fry your own circuits. This is why the distinction between cognitive empathy and effective empathy is vital. You need to be able to understand their pain without taking it home with you. You need to set limits. You can say to yourself, "I see their chaos, but I am not the container for it." There is also the risk of manipulation. A sharp social radar is a neutral tool. Con artists and sociopaths have excellent social radars. They use them to find weaknesses and exploit them. You must anchor your skills in your values. Use your radar to connect, to clarify, and to help, not to maneuver people for your own gain. Ask yourself, would I be okay if someone used this approach on me? Finally, beware of overconfidence. The better you get at reading people, the more you will think you are a mind reader. You are not. You are always guessing. The moment you stop checking your assumptions is the moment you become dangerous. Always keep the question, "Is that right?" in your back pocket. Treat every correction from others as a gift, a valuable piece of data that recalibrates your instrument for the next time. You now have a functioning radar. You can scan a person, pick up the signal, label the emotion, and verify it. You can see the invisible dynamics between two people. You are no longer walking through the minefield blindfolded. But there is one final layer of complexity. We do not just live in pairs. We live in packs. We work in teams. We live in families. We exist in communities. And when you put a group of people together, the emotions do not just add up, they multiply. They create a climate. There is a weather system in your office and in your home that affects everything you do, yet most people treat it as something they cannot control. You have learned to read the weather. Now we're going to learn how to change it. Chapter 8, Emotional Culture. You know the feeling. You walk into a specific conference room, or perhaps your parents' house for a holiday dinner, and the air feels different. It is not the temperature. It is not the lighting. It is a physical weight that settles on your shoulders. Maybe the air feels thick with unspoken tension, where everyone is waiting for an explosion. Maybe it feels cold and sterile, where laughter seems illegal. Or if you are lucky, maybe it feels light, energized, and safe. You are sensing the emotional culture. Until now, we have focused on you as an individual, your awareness, your regulation, your signals, and your radar. But you do not exist in a vacuum. You live, work, and breathe inside emotional climates. These climates are not accidents. They are not random weather patterns that you just have to endure. They are man-made systems, constructed brick by brick from the repeated behaviors, unspoken rules, and shared habits of the people inside them. Most people treat emotional culture as a fixed background reality, like gravity. They complain about a toxic workplace or a distant family as if it were a geography they are trapped in. This chapter is about realizing that you are not just a resident of these cultures. You are an architect. Whether you are the CEO, the intern, the parent, or the sibling, you are contributing to the emotional weather every time you walk into the room. The question is not whether you are shaping the culture. The question is whether you are doing it on purpose. The invisible weather system. You live inside these climates all day long. Every team, every classroom, every household has a feel. This feel is the single biggest predictor of how you will behave. If you work in a culture of fear, your brain will prioritize safety over creativity. You will hide your mistakes, you will hoard information, and you will stay quiet in meetings. It does not matter how much inner clarity you have. The environment will crush your courage because the cost of being vulnerable is too high. Conversely, in a supportive climate, growth feels natural. You take risks because you know that failure is treated as data, not a crime. You speak up because you know you will be heard. The culture acts as a force multiplier for your individual skills. If you take a person with average emotional intelligence and drop them into a high EQ culture, they will perform better. If you take a master of EQ and drop them into a toxic swamp, they will eventually suffocate. If you do not shape the climate, it shapes you. This is the danger of passivity. Human beings are herd animals. We are wired to conform. If the unspoken norm in your office is, we are cynical about everything, you will find yourself becoming cynical just to fit in. You will start mimicking the sighs, the eye rolls, and the complaints without even noticing. You become part of the problem you hate. Taking responsibility for your impact on the group is the final frontier of emotional intelligence. It is where you stop just managing yourself and start lifting the level of the entire game. Reading the room and changing it. To change a culture, you first have to read it. You need to use the social radar we built in the last chapter, but widen the aperture. Instead of scanning one person, scan the group. Ask yourself, if this room were a weather forecast, what would it be? Is it a thunderstorm? Is it a stagnant, humid fog? Is it a sunny, breezy day? Look for the emotional rules operating under the surface. Every group has them. In some families, the rule is we never talk about anything unpleasant. In some startups, the rule is you must be excited 24/7 or you are not committed. These rules are rarely written down, but everyone obeys them. They are enforced through social pressure, a raised eyebrow when someone is too vulnerable, or a collective laugh when someone is too serious. Once you see the rules, you can challenge them. You do this by creating emotional agreements. This is the shift from unconscious habits to conscious design. Instead of letting the culture happen, you ask the group, your team, your partner, your kids, how do we want to feel here? This sounds soft, but it is actually rigorous. If the team says, we want to feel safe to disagree, then you have to ask, what behaviors support that? You might agree that we do not interrupt, or we do not use sarcasm during brainstorming. These are not just nice ideas, they are operational agreements. You are building a container that holds the emotions you want and filters out the ones you don't. You do not need to be the boss to do this. You can become a quiet climate leader. You do this by modeling the emotions you want to see more of. If the room is frantic, you bring calm. If the room is cynical, you bring curiosity. Emotional contagion works both ways. Anxiety spreads, but so does groundedness. By consistently showing up with a regulated positive state, you act as a tuning fork. Eventually, the room starts to resonate at your frequency. The lies we tell about influence. There are 3 myths that stop people from doing this work. The first is that culture is HR's job. This is a fundamental misunderstanding. HR writes policies, people create culture. A policy can say, we value respect, but if the star salesperson screams at the support staff and gets a bonus, The culture is, we value money over respect. Culture is defined by the worst behavior that is tolerated. Every interaction you have contributes to the culture. Every time you gossip, you vote for a culture of distrust. Every time you offer genuine praise, you vote for a culture of appreciation. The second myth is, if I'm not the boss, I can't change anything. This is the victim mindset talking. Power and influence are not the same thing. Formal leaders have power, but informal leaders often shape the real climate. Think about the person on your team who everyone trusts, the one who organizes the happy hours or listens to the complaints. That person is a cultural architect. You always have a sphere of influence, even if it is just the 3 people you sit next to. Start there. The third myth is, we just need stricter rules. You cannot legislate emotional safety. You cannot force people to trust each other by writing a memo. Culture is shaped by what is rewarded, what is tolerated, and what is modeled. If you want a culture of honesty, you have to reward the person who delivers bad news, not shoot them. If you want a culture of kindness, you have to stop tolerating the brilliant jerk. Norms must be lived, not just posted on the break room wall. The Climate Control Protocol. So how do you actually do this? How do you shift a system that feels stuck? Start by naming the current climate. This requires courage. In a meeting or a family discussion, you simply say, "It feels really tense in here lately," or "I've noticed we seem pretty drained." You are not blaming anyone, you are just reading the thermometer. Listen to how others respond without getting defensive. Treat their responses as diagnostic data. Usually, people are relieved that someone finally said it. Next, define the desired climate. Do not aim for perfection, aim for improvement. Ask, how do we want to feel when we are working together? Narrow it down to 2 or 3 core targets. Maybe you want to feel focused and supported. Maybe you want to feel playful and connected. Then, choose the supporting behaviors. If you want to feel supported, maybe the agreement is that you start every weekly meeting with a quick check-in on how everyone is doing personally. If you want to feel focused, maybe the agreement is that you have no meeting Wednesdays. These are rituals. Rituals are the hardware of culture. They force the group to pause and realign with the emotional goal. Finally, you have to review and adjust. Culture is not a crockpot. You cannot set it and forget it. You have to check back in. We agreed to stop interrupting, but we slipped back into it today. What happened? This keeps the agreement alive. Guerrilla tactics for culture change. If you are not in charge, use guerrilla tactics. Start with your smallest circle. Do not try to change the whole company culture overnight. Pick one recurring meeting or one relationship. Apply the climate work there. When that meeting becomes the best part of the week, the most efficient, the most honest, the most safe, people will notice. They will ask what you are doing. Success breeds imitation. Lead by example, not by lecture. Nobody wants to be preached at about emotional intelligence. Do not walk around telling people they need to be more empathetic. Just be empathetic. Own your own missteps publicly. If you snap at someone, apologize in front of the group. Say, "I was unregulated there, and that wasn't fair to you. I'm sorry." That single act does more to build a culture of accountability than 1,000 seminars. Make the climate visible. We talk about revenue, we talk about grades, we talk about timelines. We rarely talk about feelings as a metric. Change that. In your retrospectives or family meetings, ask, how did it feel to work on this project? Normalize talking about feelings as part of performance. Make the invisible visible so it can be managed. The ripple effect. When you start doing this, the outcomes are tangible. At a good level, you simply become more aware. You stop unconsciously feeding the negative climate. You stop laughing at the sarcastic jokes that erode trust. You stop participating in the gossip. You become a neutralizer of toxicity. At an excellent level, you help your group define and commit to agreements. You notice a reduction in friction. Meetings are shorter because people aren't posturing or hiding. Arguments in the family happen, but they are resolved quicker because there is a baseline of safety. People start saying things like, "It feels better here now," or "I actually look forward to coming in." At the best level, you become a recognized emotional leader. You create pockets of sanity in an insane world. You help create cultures where people feel safe enough to be bold, to innovate, and to tell the truth. You see the results in the hard numbers: better retention, higher creativity, faster problem solving. You realize that the soft stuff was actually the hard stuff all along, and because you handled it, everything else got easier. When the system fights back, be prepared for resistance. Systems like stability, even if the stability is toxic. When you start changing the emotional norms, people who benefited from the old way will push back. The person who uses bullying to get their way will not like your no interruption rule. The family member who uses guilt to control others will hate your honest signals agreement. Do not take this personally. It is just the system trying to maintain homeostasis. Fix this by tying the changes to shared goals. We aren't doing this just to be nice. We are doing this so we stop wasting hours in unproductive meetings. Show them the payoff. Also, watch out for the trap of over-responsibility. You can influence the climate, but you cannot control other people. You are not the emotional janitor. It is not your job to clean up everyone's messes or to make sure everyone is happy all the time. Your job is to set the standard, model the behavior, and invite others to join you. If they refuse, you have to set boundaries to protect your own climate. Finally, do not over-theorize. It is easy to get stuck talking about culture in the abstract. Keep it concrete. Choose one behavior change this week. Implement it. See what happens. Culture is built in the micro-interactions, not in the mission statement. You have now traveled the full arc. You started by looking in the mirror and finding the gap between your feelings and your actions. You learned to name your emotions, use them as logic, and regulate your state. You learned to broadcast honest signals and read the signals of others. And now you have learned how to weave those skills together to shape the world around you. You have the map, you have the tools, you have the understanding. But there is one final problem. A book is a static object. Life is a dynamic, chaotic, ever-changing stream. How do you ensure that these skills don't just fade away a month after you finish reading? How do you turn this crash course into a permanent upgrade to your operating system? How do you move from knowing emotional intelligence to mastering it for the rest of your life? That is the final challenge. Chapter 9, Lifelong Mastery. There is a dangerous moment that happens right after you finish a book like this. You close the cover or swipe to the final page, and you feel a surge of clarity. You feel understood. You feel equipped. You tell yourself things are going to be different now. And then Monday morning hits. You wake up late. The coffee spills. Your inbox is a disaster zone of urgent demands. A colleague makes a passive-aggressive comment in the 9 a.m. meeting, and before you know it, the clarity evaporates. The old neural pathways light up like a Christmas tree, and you snap, or you shut down, or you seethe in silence. By Tuesday, the book is just a memory, a nice idea that couldn't survive contact with reality. This chapter is here to prevent that. We are not going to let this be another shelf-help book that gathers dust while your life remains exactly the same. We are going to turn this from a one-time intellectual event into a permanent operating system upgrade. You have the theory. You have the tools. Now we need to talk about the practice. Mastery is not a destination you arrive at. It is a habit you inhabit. The full stack upgrade. Let's look at what you have actually built over the last 8 chapters. You didn't just learn some vocabulary. You dismantled the myth that emotions are mystical, uncontrollable weather patterns. You learned that emotional intelligence is a mechanical skill set, as trainable as coding or carpentry. You started by installing a dashboard. You moved from the fog of "I feel bad" to the precision of "I feel diminished and defensive." You learned that naming an emotion is the first step to taming it. You then rewired your decision-making process, realizing that logic without emotion is blind, and that the best choices come from giving your feelings a vote, not a veto. You built a braking system. You learned that you don't have to be a slave to your amygdala. You can pause. You can regulate. You can choose a response that aligns with your values rather than your impulses. You then turned outward, learning to broadcast honest signals so people don't have to guess your intent, and tuning your radar to read the hidden data in the room. Finally, you realized you are an architect of the emotional culture around you, capable of shifting the temperature of a room just by how you show up. This is a full-stack upgrade of your human software, but software only works if you run it. From victim to author. The greatest shift you will experience as you apply this is the move from emotional victimhood to emotional authorship. Most people live their entire lives as victims of their own chemistry. They say things like, "He made me so mad," or "This day ruined my mood." They are leaves blowing in the wind, completely at the mercy of external events. When you practice these skills, you become the wind. You realize that while you cannot control the trigger, the rude email, the traffic jam, the rejection, you have absolute authority over the response. This is the ultimate leverage. In a world where everyone else is reacting, the person who responds is king. You will find that you are no longer afraid of your own intensity. You can ride a wave of grief or anger without drowning in it because you know you have the skills to swim. You trust yourself in high-pressure moments. When the stakes are high and everyone else is losing their heads, you will be the one checking your dashboard, regulating your breath, and making a call based on clear, feeling logic. That kind of calm is rare, and it is invaluable. The relationship revolution. The impact on your relationships will be nothing short of revolutionary. Most relationships die the death of 1,000 cuts, small resentments, unsaid words, and safe lies that build a wall of distance. With these tools, you can engage in deep honesty with less damage. You can look someone in the eye and say, "I feel hurt by what you said," without attacking their character. You can express a hard truth without burning the house down. This means fewer hidden resentments rotting in the basement. It means conflicts become solvable puzzles rather than repeating battles. You will also find the power of the clean number. Most people say yes out of guilt and then resent the commitment. You will learn to say no clearly and respectfully, protecting your energy so that when you say yes, you mean it fully. This builds immense trust. People feel safer with you because they know where the boundaries are. They know you aren't hiding anything. Your consistency becomes a calming presence in their lives. What you can do now. Think about the things you used to avoid. That difficult feedback conversation with an underperforming employee, you can handle that now. You have the feeling, reason, request template. You can deliver the message with clarity and kindness, stripping away the anxiety that used to make you procrastinate. Think about the apologies you never made because your ego was too fragile. You can handle those now. You can admit, "I was unregulated and I snapped," because you know that a mistake is a data point, not a character flaw. Think about the environments you used to complain about, the toxic team meetings, the tense family dinners. You don't have to just endure them anymore. You can propose new agreements. You can name the elephant in the room. You can be the one who shifts the culture from fear to safety. You have moved from being a consumer of emotional climates to a creator of them. The law of compound returns. Here is the secret that makes this sustainable. It gets easier. Right now, doing a body scan or pausing before a reaction feels like heavy lifting. It requires conscious, burning effort. That is normal. You are building new neural pathways through a dense jungle of old habits. But if you stay with it, the law of compound returns kicks in. The check-ins become automatic. You won't have to stop and think, "I need to check my state." You will just notice it. The regulation tools will activate faster. You will catch yourself getting triggered and breathe through it before you even realize you're doing it. Empathy will become your default setting, not a task you have to remember to perform. This reduces the friction in your life. Think of how much energy you currently waste repairing damage from impulsive reactions, or worrying about what someone meant by that text, or stewing in anger. As your skills sharpen, that wasted energy is returned to you. You have more bandwidth for creativity, for joy, for strategy. The gap between the effort you put in and the results you get shrinks until mastery looks like magic to the outside observer. The first step: do not try to change everything at once. That is a recipe for failure. We need to pick one thread to pull that will unravel the old pattern. Choose one micro habit, just one. Maybe it is the 60-second check-in. 3 times a day, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, you stop and ask, what am I feeling and where do I feel it? That's it. You build the radar. Maybe it is the pause rule. You decide that for the next 7 days, you will not reply to any text or email that triggers an emotional spike for at least 5 minutes. You force the gap. Maybe it is the empathy question. In every significant conversation you have this week, you ask one question: what is this like for you? Commit to this for 7 days. Treat it as a non-negotiable experiment. You are a scientist collecting data on your own life. Watch what happens. Watch how the interactions shift. Watch how your own stress levels change. After a week, you can refine it, extend it, or add a new layer. And tell someone. Emotional intelligence is not a solo sport. Share your language with a partner or a friend. Tell them, I'm working on noticing when I get defensive. Give them permission to call you on it gently. Turn your growth into a shared journey. The final charge. You have a choice to make right now. You can put this book down and go back to sleep. You can go back to the autopilot existence, reacting blindly to every stimulus, letting your moods dictate your life, and wondering why things never seem to change. That is the easy path. It is the path of least resistance. Or you can refuse to go back. You can decide that you are done being a passenger. You can decide that every day is a training ground. Every conflict is a rep. Every disappointment is a chance to practice regulation. Every joy is a chance to practice connection. You can treat the hard days not as proof that you are failing, but as advanced training for the athlete you are becoming. Adopt this simple mantra: notice, choose. Notice the sensation. Don't let it slip by in the fog. Catch the tightening chest, the racing mind, the heat in the face. Name it. Pin it down with a precise word. I am feeling insecurity. I am feeling resentment. Strip the monster of its power by defining it. Choose. Do not let the emotion choose for you. Ask, what does my best self do right now? And then do that thing. This is not about being perfect. You will mess up. You will yell. You will shut down. When you do, use your skills to repair the damage, learn the lesson, and get back in the driver's seat. The goal is not a life without storms. The goal is a life where you are the captain of the ship, capable of navigating any water, no matter how rough. You have the tools, you have the map, you know exactly what to do. The next move is yours.